Well, medical doctor, Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, an osteopathic medical doctor from Cleveland, Ohio, board certification in emergency medicine and osteopathic manual medicine at her integrative medical clinic focused on allergy elimination, including treatment of children with asthma and allergies at Women's Health using bioidentical hormones and breast thermography. Her clinic has restored the health of patients who have come from 38 states and 8 countries. And it goes on. She's the executive director of the, well, I mean, you tell us your bio, because you've done so much. You were probably the leading person in the last decade exposing vaccines. You had a big debate last night. I want to get into that. I want to just sit back and let you tell the listeners the latest developments with the flu, the forced inoculations in public schools they've been caught doing, and then saying, oops, we messed up, the rebellion by doctors worldwide. It looks like this flu scam has really stalled, dead in its tracks. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, you got the floor.
One of the things that we did was we created tools for people to get out and get active. We created flyers and small PowerPoint presentations, and we put them on our website, pandemicfluonline.com. They're also on drtenpenny.com, which is my website. And we've done just an amazing amount of things to get people active. And I think that there's more people that are asking questions and are being part of what's happening right now than ever before. I mean, 10 years ago when we started talking about all these things that had to do with vaccines, there was barely a voice. There was hardly anybody listening. And now what they're doing is more and more people are getting involved. People are asking questions. People are saying no. People are challenging their doctors. They're finding out that they don't need a pediatrician if they have healthy children. They can find other types of healthcare practitioners to help them stay well and stay out of the vaccination lines.
Going back to April, and I had said in January they're going to stage some flu hype because I saw the federal government and FEMA getting ready with local police departments saying get ready for mass graves, a big pandemic's coming. The flu makers were quietly gearing up. They knew this was coming. A lot of scientists say it's clearly been designed. Then we saw the hype in the aftermath, the attempt to make it mandatory in New York and Massachusetts. I mean, I know you're a scientist, a doctor, a researcher, a journalist. You go off what you can prove. But in your gut, is this whole thing staged?
I think that there is some staging to it. And what I'm really concerned about is the next wave that's going to come along. I think that these people, they pushed way too hard to get everybody vaccinated for what was known to be a mild virus. It wasn't any different than any other influenza virus that we've seen before. And they pushed way too hard. Now we're seeing some things sort of fall through the cracks. I'm real concerned about the stuff that's happening in the Ukraine. I mean, we don't know for sure what's happening over there. We really don't know what's going to happen come wintertime, when the Winter Olympics is in Vancouver and there's a whole group of people that are there from all over the world. I mean, what's going to happen then? I'm really concerned about the accidents that are happening in schools as these kids are getting 2 and 3 and 4 flu shots, that they get the regular flu shot and the swine flu shot. I'm super concerned about the flu mist vaccine.
Yeah, maybe it was an accident with Jeffrey Dahmer. Maybe that was all an accident. I mean, it's always an accident. If you or I injected a child whose parents were against it, we go to jail. But when they have accidents, oopsie, no big deal.
Yeah, and they always say that, these kids got multiple flu shots and they were safe, nothing had happened. Well, you can't say that because you don't know what's going to happen 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years from now.
Well, we're also only finding out about mainly children that collapse and go to the hospital. That's what we found out in New York and other states, that they had done a secret inoculation. And notice the accidents are all with elementary students where they think the children won't be able to explain the story. And we caught schools denying they'd done it, and then later it would come out they had. So they're also lying. I mean, this is really creepy and criminal.
It very is much creepy and criminal. And it's like parents should have some recourse to that. Now, I don't think that the parents can actually sue the school system because they have to prove that something had harmed them. But I think they can go after the school boards. They can vote them out. They can show up at the school boards every single session that they have and force them to give them an answer. They can say, where is our money going? How much money are you getting, school board, for doing these inoculations in these school systems? And I think that parents need to be really, really proactive because this is just the first step. If they're doing this with flu shots, what's going to be the next thing? Are they going to inoculate kids at school with Gardasil?
Okay, stay there. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny is our guest. We're going to come back, long segment. We're going to go over the flu, Gardasil, the forced inoculations, what's happening in Ukraine, what she thinks is coming up next. But first, we'll talk about the debate last night, get some details from her on that. Well, the leading fighter against the military-industrial complex, big pharma push to force Gardasil, hepatitis shots, flu shots filled with mercury on our children is here. She's been debating the health department at the University of Texas at Austin. She is here in studio with us. Your calls are coming up at the bottom of the hour at 1-800-259-9231. Okay, Doc, addressing folks out there in TV land and in radio land, you've got the floor. Whatever you think is most important to talk about. I'd like to first hear about the debate last night, what you did today, and then what your concerns about this being a preparatory phase for something bigger this year or next year, what's happening in Ukraine, the good news that people are resisting, the bad news that the government's still trying to push it. Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, give us a report.
Well, last night was a really interesting evening at the health department with the officials from the health department. We had the person that was on stage with us, which was great, Dr. Betts. I mean, he really was a trooper. I mean, he actually had said to us before we started the talk, we went up and introduced ourselves and said, thank you for coming, and we really like to have you. You know, we're really glad that you're willing to do this. And he said, well, nobody else really wanted to do it. And I said, well, why is that? He says, here's your opportunity. Here's your floor in terms of your opportunity to tell your whole side of the story. And he said, well, we've done things like this before and they haven't gone well. And I think it really did go well. I think that we had a very respectful audience. I think that we had an opportunity to have questions ahead of time that we had answered. Some of the questions were things like, do we really think that the H1N1 vaccine was really going to be the cause of the pandemic? And one of the things that I said was, well, I think that the flu mist has a risk because that's a live virus vaccine that's being going up everybody's nose, and that you can shed that virus for up to 21 days. But that I have personally a bigger concern about Tamiflu, and that I think that Tamiflu, and even in the scientific literature, it talks about 16% of the viruses each year become resistant to Tamiflu. So if we start creating very resistant mutant viruses, and those mutant viruses get out into the environment and they're resistant, and they start to do this thing called reassortment and come together and create an even bigger vaccine, a bigger virus that is going to be even more of a problem. And they sort of agreed with that. One of the questions that got asked to me was, is there any evidence in the medical literature that vaccines have caused harm and problems? And I was really glad that came to me because, you know, I spend most of my life researching the problems with vaccines, and I know that I've personally done more than 350 articles that have pulled looking at all the different problems with all of the different vaccines, particularly hepatitis B, the things with the flu shot, things with all the different vaccines that can cause problems. And they can cause problems by about 5 or 6 different mechanisms of action. So I think that there were 4 other health department officials that were there last night. They were sitting in the audience. And you could tell by the looks on their face and sort of their body language that they weren't in much agreement when Dawn Richardson from Prove and I were doing sort of a back and forth. But they couldn't deny the fact that there was another whole side of this story. They couldn't deny the fact that we were telling them what the science and the research was. They darted and danced around a lot of the issues sometimes when people were asking them about mandates. They never did give really straight answers. And I think that Texas, at least from what they said last night, and I'm really glad that Alex, that people were there filming this, because they were saying in quite strong language that we're not going to see mandates in Texas. Flu shots will not be mandated in Texas. And I think that if there becomes a problem down the road with this flu shot shortage, and if they think it gets worse over the winter and they start pulling this stuff about mandates, I hope that now you've got recording on footage that you can go back and challenge them on that, to saying that you are backing out on your word.
Just to jump in briefly, the problem is, as you know, they do this color of law. They tell parents, it's mandatory your children take the flu shot. They've been announcing all children must take it all over the country. And then they kick your child out saying they violated policy, and then trigger truancy laws. So they kick you out themselves, then they trigger the truancy provision, and then have a few examples of a couple parents they haul into court, and then the news announce parents have been arrested or parents have been charged for not vaccinating, when really the school knows they have that vaccine waiver exemption form. They never tell you, and engage in the crime of kicking your child out. It's like Governor Rick Perry 2 years ago says, it's mandatory, all girls in Texas must take Gardasil. Then federal vaccine liability protection kicks in. Merck knows in their own trials it killed and maimed people. Now nationwide they announce all girls must take it. But really, he just said it's a recommended through the health department that it be listed on the group that they say it's school policy you take. So they dance around this because with people that are ignorant, they come in and lie and say you must take these shots. I mean, I've read reports in mainstream news about parents having their children CPS'd, taken, or trying to take them for not taking hepatitis shots with a newborn baby. There's no law. How are they taking your children, saying it's neglect? Can you speak to that, how deceptive these people are?
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to think about that. I mean, when parents go to the hospitals and they're going to have their baby, I mean, I always say the place where you need to intercede, actually at the very beginning place where I think people need to intercede and investigate the vaccine issue is when they're dating somebody. Because at that point in time, you're probably talking about how your families get along. You're talking about religion and politics and money and living and jobs and careers. You really need to discuss the vaccination issue because it may turn out that the one person in the party is totally against vaccines and the other person is totally for vaccines. Now, can you imagine getting married and bringing a child into that and at that point in time having this huge contention?